What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us. I'm excited. You should be excited because guess what? NBA basketball, it's back, folks. We're on board. 2-game slate to kick off, or I guess in the NBA world, tip off the 75th anniversary for the league. It begins tonight with some studs that'll be available to you. I'm not just here to talk about it alone, though. I got my guy, Eric Lindquist is here with you. And we have got so much to cover. Obviously, it's only a half-hour show, so we'll get into the two different games here, Eric. And I want to shout out our producer, Jordan. It's his birthday. We see the nice happy birthday wishes in the chat that have been sent my way as kind of a YouTube gag. Well, guess what? If you're listening, it's Jordan's actual birthday. Wish this man, Mr. Klein, a happy birthday. Eric, how are you?
Happy birthday,
Do
Mr.
it.
President.
Do it. Close your eyes, Jordan. What do you visualize?
You. How about that? Little Maryland for you. Getting it going. What's going on, everybody?
Please stay fully clothed. I'm begging you.
I'm just saying it says swish. No, I'm very excited to be talking some
Haven't
NBA.
you created enough problems around here?
Keep
your clothes on.
Kaufman, this is a Jock Market show. We're having a blast. No, I'm absolutely love Jordan Klein over there behind the virtual glass. Happy birthday to you, my dude. Sorry to everybody for having to go straight up Marilyn Monroe on the world, but it is what it is.
So as you mentioned, this is the Jock Market NBA show. And for anyone out there, because I know Mr. Lindquist here has some super fans. They watch anything and everything that he does, but it's possible they've heard you just talking DFS or other platforms. They're a little unfamiliar with how things work in the Jock Market world. Could you, I know you could go on for the next half hour breaking it all down, but how about a quick little summation for what people are in for here for the next half hour?
All right. So welcome to Jock Market. This is where the stock market basically becomes DFS. We are able to buy, sell, and trade shares of players. That's kind of what we're interested in doing. There's a pre-game IPO phase, which is generally 2 hours before the slate locks. So whatever the slate lock time is going to be, that's when everything starts for the buying and selling and trading portion of it. But we're just buying in the pre-game IPO phase. We have projections that are free and available on Awesemo.com to be able to go and see kind of what they're valued at. And it's tiered. So based on the end of the night, with the payouts, they're going to be $25 to first place, $20 to second, so on and so forth. So we're looking for people to just put up a ton of fantasy points, and we want to be invested in those players. And, there's only a little bit of room for some of the guys on the top end to grow, but if you have enough bankroll, you're able to go and get those players. It can be profitable so long as they're getting underneath a little bit of what their fair IPO price is going to be. That's basically what we're really talking about on this show. And then once the games are going on in real time, you get to buy, sell, and trade players. It's a lot of fun. You can react to things if somebody gets into foul trouble, if there's an injury. There's so many nuanced little things that can happen on Jock Market. It's a really fun way to play DFS.
Well, as you noted, of course, it's we're stud heavy tonight. We'll get into that, and for anyone that missed some of that breakdown, go back, relive, and all that, because this show, it will live on for you. And you have, as things stand right now, it looks like about 4 hours until the first game, and again, just a 2-game slate. Things really get busy in the NBA tomorrow, but right now, just a little 2-gamer to wet our collective whistles. It's Brooklyn at the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks, a 7:30 Eastern tip. After that, Golden State at the LA Lakers at 10 o'clock. So those two games, budged up right up against each other, which is good. It's exciting. We can really just watch nonstop basketball for about, 5-hour period of time. But as I mentioned, the studs here, Eric, in that first game, as we know, there's no Kyrie Irving, sort of indefinitely. He's unvaccinated, along with only about 4% of the NBA, and he intends to, at least for the time being, remain that way. I'm skeptical. I feel like eventually he's going to change his mind on that front. But for now, you have James Harden, you have Kevin Durant. They're both playing tonight. Other side of that game, obviously, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday. If you want to work your way down just a little bit, when it comes to projections, Giannis, he's the stud. He is the reigning finals MVP. He is projected for about 52 fantasy points tonight. And the fair IPO price for him right now is just a shade over $20. $20 and looking like 20 cents, 20.2 at the moment. And right behind him, obviously, you have Harden, you have Steph Curry in the late game, you have Durant, you have Russell Westbrook and LeBron James also available to you in that late game. And then you get to Middleton and Anthony Davis, guys like that. So how are you feeling about Giannis? Should he be at the top of the heap here with all those other stars available?
Absolutely. So there's one part to the scoring on Jock Market that needs to be addressed right from the get-go, because I think that it really matters. And that is missed shots. -0.5 for missed shots ends up being the difference between a projection for a guy like James Harden or Kevin Durant, who, they can certainly go 16 for 30 and blow up the slate in some regards, but they can also go 10 for 30, which will be a drastically different fantasy outcome. A guy like Giannis, a majority of his shots, I know he has an improved jumper. Everybody keeps posting about it on Twitter. I don't really care. I know he can get to the basket and he can do everything on a basketball floor. Not that James Harden can't create shots and do other things as well, but definitely has more of a turnover problem that goes there. -0.5 for that as well on Jock Market. For me, Giannis is the guy to go get. If he is not reaching the $20 threshold on Jock Market, you have a great investment opportunity going to Giannis on the top end. And then Harden and Durant, Kyrie Irving. I like what you said there. I think it's not even necessarily a political thing. I think it's money talks. And when you give up this amount of money and you have a shoe company that's basically not exactly thrilled that you're not going to be on a floor, there's a number of things and repercussions that are going to exist. Maybe a Ben Simmons for Kyrie trade straight up at this point. Who says no to that one?
We know things are not good in Philly right now for anyone that's been
really
following along
though.
with Ben Simmons today. In fact, it seems each development is worse than the one that preceded it, which is remarkable. For anyone that missed it today, we won't dive into this because obviously Philly's not on the slate today, but Ben Simmons was defiant of Doc Rivers at practice. Rivers reportedly wanted him to take part in defensive drill. Asked him, he said no. Asked him again, he said no. Told him to leave. Sent him off the court. And Simmons, straight out of screw this, I'm going home. Eric Cartman just dropped the ball and said, I'm leaving, and took off. Joel Embiid after the fact saying that he's got, hasn't talked to him since Simmons came back. It has no use for him. Basically, he's not paid to babysit, all of that. So yeah, things are going swimmingly if you're a Sixers fan.
It's so great, though. It's a golden opportunity for Ben Simmons to come back out and be like, we're talking about practice, not a game, not a game. Practice. Allen Iverson.
Bring it back for Philly. Philly needs it.
Philly does need that. They need some levity because I can tell you, I don't think anybody likes that guy right now. I will say, though, the two guys that I do like, James Harden, Kevin Durant, it's hard not to like them in DFS formats all over the place. I'm kind of concerned, though. This game environment is so much better. I mean, not so much better, but it's nearly 10 points better than we have in the late night hammer Golden State and the Lakers game. It's expected to be close here, only a 1.5 spread. It's actually shifted from the Bucks side to the Nets side, which is very surprising to me, considering they're on the road here. That's been some interesting line movement throughout the day, but the game environment, 237.5 total. And James Harden can no longer flail and just lean into people and get free throws constantly, because the NBA is definitely cracking down on some of those fouls. Yep. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what his free throw allotment is going to be this year compared to other years. I think I would be more inclined to go to the Kevin Durant side, just in the event that he were to go completely ballistic. You're going to see him being the primary scorer. We saw James Harden and Kevin Durant. James Harden was creating a lot for this basketball team. Maybe that elevates his floor because he won't be taking nearly as many shot attempts. But I think for a little bit less in our projections, considering it's a $2 difference, I really like the Kevin Durant side.
So I'm just interested to see what it looks like without Kyrie Irving. And it's not as though we don't have some idea. Obviously, that team, for one reason or another, I mean, it was so banged up at portions of last year, especially in the latter half after Harden got there and into the playoffs, where, a lot of the time we were seeing lineups that didn't have Kyrie Irving that had the other two, or didn't have James Harden but had the other two, and so on and so forth. So, we do know what this looks like. But now that it's a new year, now that this team is prepared to not have Kyrie Irving again for an indefinite period of time, when it was all three of them out there on the floor, Eric, you saw Harden as really the one that kind of took the back seat. Didn't mean he had bad fantasy nights, but he wasn't putting up, let's say, 20 shots. He was much more efficient. He was shooting great. And so what you were talking about before, missed shots aren't going to count against him. At least they weren't last year, at toward the end of the season. Right now, when it's just the two, when it's those two in particular, and yes, they have a better supporting cast around them than they had last year as well. So that's something to consider. And LaMarcus Aldridge is there now, and so on. They added some vets. So we need to be aware of that. But when it comes to Harden, when it comes to Durant, I guess I still wonder if they're going to spread it around more, if Harden is going to be more of a, taking the page out of a guy we'll talk about later, Russell Westbrook's book, and be more of a volume stat guy, rack up he's more likely certainly than Durant in my mind for the double-double.
We saw James Harden kind of go ballistic in Houston. Right. He was accumulating stats left and right. I don't think that it's even a question about that. For me, it's also what else exists on this basketball team that's really going to help out offensively. I mean, Joe Harris, one of the best shooters in the league, insane efficiency numbers that exist there, but they're really relying on Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, who we haven't seen for a while. I'm happy that he's going to be back on the floor, but Bruce Brown's going to have to play some kind of a scoring role for this basketball team. You have Patty Mills, who with the San Antonio Spurs was a facilitator, but we've seen him in events like for the Australian team for the Olympics this season. The guy can get a bucket. He absolutely is capable at the NBA level of making it happen. So I'm not sure where the other scoring is going to come from. So a majority of it you have to think is going to be James Harden and Kevin Durant just going for broke, especially here in the early portion of the season. I'm sure they're going to make moves. I'm sure that they're going to be proactive because you have Kevin Durant and James Harden. You want to build a winning basketball team, but they're going to need some scoring help somewhere. But for the meantime, right out of the gate here, I got to think it's going to be primarily those two.
Harden, you can see it on your screen there. He is projected for about 48.5 points, 18.7 in terms of the dollars, his fair IPO price. Durant, shade behind in both categories. He's projected for about 43. He's just below $16 for his price. I'm on the other side of this one versus you. I think they're both going to have great nights. Don't get me wrong. We know that typically 2 out of the 3 always did. And without Irving, it sets up real well for these two. But I think that the one who typically just starts off hotter, he is, maybe more aggressive, again, more stat padding. I think it's James Harden. Now, if you want to make the case, again, going back to missed shots hurting you, we know Harden is just ripe for an 8 for 25 game. That's entirely possible. So if that happens, it swings the other way, and Durant's a guy that you're more invested in and should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'm going to argue with you that I think James Harden's going to be able to accumulate more just for a cheaper number, considering it's $16. we talk about ownership and talking about the differences on DFS sites. For me, it's basically what are other people going to be valuing these players at? I think in a vacuum, sure, James Harden versus Kevin Durant straight up, that's perfect. But once that pregame IPO shows up, Kevin Durant, I got to expect James Harden, he's popping in every model. He's popping in our projections. He's popping all the way across the industry. I think it's just, a 1.5 or 2 points behind Giannis on a site like DK or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a drastic difference between him and Kevin Durant. So for me, it's more of just isolating it. If there's a massive gap, if it's a $4 or $5 gap, I think I'm more inclined to go into Kevin Durant. There's almost no way in my mind that Kevin Durant is going to end up being more expensive than James Harden in that pregame IPO phase. So it's more of me saying that I'm willing to take shots on the rest of the field or Kevin Durant if you're kind of like looking for one of the two, mainly because it's very tough for me to imagine a world where James Harden really gives you a huge payoff. I mean, $25 is the largest number you can accumulate per share. And so I'm much rather just going down to the bottom of the board. And I normally do on Jock Market. I think it's a lot more fun to buy shares of a Bruce Brown or a Grayson Allen or some of these guys that are going for $7 or $8 or less and kind of making your stand that way.
You mentioned DK DFS. If it does enter into anybody's minds, just so you know, I pulled up our own Alex Baker's projections, Awesemo himself. Giannis is obviously the top projected guy tonight. It's, falls in line with him being the top projected scorer on Jock Market, being the most expensive guy in terms of the shares as well. But James Harden, about 54 points as compared to Harden's, Giannis's 57. So Harden at about 54, whereas Kevin Durant is down around 47, 48. Interestingly, though, value. I always look at value, and Harden is considered the top value option, even at his salary on the entire slate. He's getting you about 7.5x, at least in terms of the projection, whereas Durant comes in as a negative value player based on his salary. So I don't know if that impacts your thinking in any way, or if it's just so different, DFS to Jock Market, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you have the missed shots, you have the turnovers, you have things in that regard. The missed shots being the major one. James Harden's never been an efficient guy. He's been a volume scorer, but he's very, very capable of that. Capable of having those big game-changing nights. He's very consistent in terms of putting up fantasy points. And this isn't a sport like baseball or baseball or football, where we talk about variance a bunch on these shows. And basketball is much easier projected just because you're able to get players that perform at a certain fantasy point per minute rate. And that's going to kind of be predictable if they play 38, 40 minutes, as long as there's not a major blowout. And I don't think there's major blowout concerns for either of these games, really. You're looking at James Harden being able to consistently be one of the top 5 fantasy scorers every single time you play out this 2-game slate. For me, it just comes down to what am I getting by investing in him? And if he's going for $18 plus, it's hard to see a ceiling there on that money.
Folks, want to tell you, you can celebrate the start of the NBA season with us. We encourage that you do, obviously. A special tip-off deal grants all new Awesemo Plus members 50% off your first week at Awesemo Plus Platinum. Use the promo code. It is Curry. That is, of course, Steph Curry. Curry, Curry, at checkout, or click the link in the video description below to activate. You can do that as well. It includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com for every sport, including projections, player projections, ownership as well. Our super popular NBA boom bust tool. We like to talk about that. Lineup builders. I'm really into that. Fantasy Cruncher and so on. So much more. The offer is valid through Monday, October 25th. It's right around the corner. Hurry up. Lock in the deal to start your Awesemo Plus membership. It is only $15. We encourage that you do so. So obviously, Eric, I mentioned Curry, Steph Curry. He is available to the folks in the late game tonight, along with a lot of studs. You got LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, Steph kind of on an island on the Golden State side, unless you're real big on, Andrew Wiggins, let's say. But in terms of pricing, Curry, he is the third most projected in terms of points, most projected score, highest projected score at about 45 points here on Jock Market. He is $17, his fair IPO price. You have similar company, Westbrook and LeBron as well. They're right around them, priced a little bit lower, projected a little bit less. Anthony Davis, you got to go down even farther as well. What's your view of that game in terms of the stars?
I mean, the Russell Westbrook thing is going to be very difficult. Last year, Brooklyn, I don't know if anybody can really remember when they acquired James Harden, and it became Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, trying to figure out how those three are going to be sharing the basketball, how they're going to find each other's shots, how they're going to create, who's going to facilitate. It ended up being James Harden. Kyrie Irving just was a pure volume scorer at that point, but it was so hard to find a ceiling on any of those three on any given night. You were just basically grasping at straws. I think we're looking at a very similar thing here. I mean, Anthony Davis and LeBron James obviously have some continuity that exists there. And Russell Westbrook, I don't think they're bringing him in there to be a volume scorer. He's a high energy guy. He can fill up a box score. He gets a lot done. One of the best rebounding point guards we've ever seen in the NBA. So I got to think that that's going to be a little bit more of his role on this team, but that definitely takes and caps a ceiling on him too. I don't see many 30, even with Washington last season, one of the most up-paced teams in the NBA, there weren't a ton of 25, 30-point games, especially for the first half of the season. Even when he was on that ridiculous triple-double run, there were a lot of times it was like 18, 15, 12. So I'm thinking Anthony Davis is definitely going to be the star that we want to rely on a little bit more. I also say that knowing full well that Rinpack, I get to do a podcast and talk about the slate leading into it. Anthony Davis is his entire favorite play on every single DFS site for today. And so knowing that I have that kind of insight, there's definitely going to be one guy who kind of takes over the reins. And Anthony Davis, I still think, is at the absolute complete height of his powers.
It's funny. Alex hates Anthony Davis tonight for people looking at projections in terms of DFS.
Oh,
Listen,
I
know. I don't know how to put it any better than this. Let me get all up in the mic.
I'm ready.
The Lakers are going to be a freaking disaster this year.
I love you.
Disaster.
I love that you said that because I feel like hang on.
God,
I don't think disaster. Here's what's going to happen.
Here's what I mean by disaster. Okay. I'm not saying like missed playoffs. When I say disaster, I mean people are talking about them as though, of course, they're going to win a championship, pencil them in, bottom line, at least to the Western Conference Final. This is a team that is going to finish. I will be surprised if it doesn't finish in the 6 through play-in tournament 9 slots. It's going to be in the
Stephen A.
10,
Smith.
Actually. So
Stephen A. Smith, easy over there. I mean, I get it. This team's going to be again 6 or it's going to be right back in the play-in tournament like it was last year, because I just can't think of Russell Westbrook is a great individual player. He, stat pads, the volume and all of that. He's going to put up numbers, but you're adding a player like that to about the worst possible environment that you could put him in. I mean, they could have added at the time, all the rumors, like the Rudy Gay rumors. Rudy Gay would have been a better addition for the Lakers based on what they needed, based on what fit, than Russell Westbrook. And that's not me saying Rudy Gay is a better basketball player than Russell Westbrook. He's not. But in terms of fit to that team, that LeBron needs to have the ball. Well, guess what? So does Russ. They can't defend. This team is so old and so offense heavy, defense, stay away. They can't stop. They're not going to be able to stop anyone, which is great, I guess, for fantasy, because we're going to get high scoring games like crazy every time the Lakers are in action. But if they manage to stay healthy and don't just obnoxiously stagger their rest nights throughout the entire season, which they probably will anyway, and they'll very rarely even have all three of those guys out on the floor in the same nights, tonight notwithstanding, obviously, because it's the opener, I think this is going to be ugly compared to expectation. Okay, so I misinterpreted what you were getting at when you were going to say 8-9 seed. I was saying from a fantasy perspective, they're going to be a disaster because they are a team that doesn't like to play up in pace. They just don't. They didn't last year. They're definitely going to be run down the shot clock, give the ball to Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, create something and go, because they don't necessarily have the kind of shooting, the up and down ability to get it going. Maybe Russell Westbrook can add some kind of dimension to that, but I doubt it. They're going to definitely slow it down like they did last season. And no Alex Caruso there. Not that anybody cares about that, but one of the best individual defenders in the NBA. I digress.
You're not just saying that because he's a doppelganger for our boss, are you?
Perhaps. I got to give him a shout out. Never seen them in the same room
apologies
together.
To William in the chat, by the way. I said Rudy Gay. I meant Buddy Hield. So I apologize.
Okay.
I did mean Buddy Hield. I was picturing Buddy Hield. I was thinking about Buddy Hield. Rudy Gay came out of my mouth. There we are. But the point still stands. Russell Westbrook, not the ideal fit for the Lakers.
No, I don't think he is either. And for me, it just comes down to I need those rest nights to be able to kind of predict what we're going to get from a fantasy aspect out of this team. Not that Kyle Kuzma was any good. He was really no good with the Lakers, but there's really no guy that's coming off the bench that I'm super excited about either with this team. It's just kind of a mishmash of random players with random abilities. Carmelo Anthony definitely showed a little something in Portland, but I mean, he just continues to get older. I'm not sure what that's going to look like here this season either. LeBron James is starting to get towards the tail end. I think he's going to always fit on any basketball team because he's definitely a pass first guy in any kind of situation. And then he can create his own shot at will. So I have no issues about LeBron either. But Russell Westbrook is one of the stranger pieces that I can imagine trying to project on this slate. So from a jock market perspective, looking at those three, it's so hard for me to know, understanding what their name recognition is going to be coming into all of these slates, all of these games, and knowing that the projections are just capped on all these dudes. Russell Westbrook under 40, Anthony Davis under 35, LeBron James under 40. I mean, that is very, very diluted production throughout this entire roster. So from a fantasy angle, I think they're going to be a disaster to project until people start to adjust expectations.
Oh, that's going to be a nightmare. I'm talking about the overall team output.
I know you were, and that's where I was like, whoa.
But in terms of fantasy, yeah. But I mean, that's at this point in time, that's not even all that unique, right? Like that's not unique to the Lakers. It's not unique to the Nets. Like, you know, the Warriors back when Durant was there and everybody was healthy, they had Clay and obviously Draymond. And, you know, as we know, Steph, who's, you know, the defending leading scorer in the NBA, and there are other teams as well. It's, you know, my beloved Celtics. Is it a Tatum night? Is it a Brown night? Or is it both of them? Which, you know, a lot of the time last year it was. Like, you can look at a whole bunch of teams across the league that have a legit two guys, arguably three, or, you know, more of a bounce. Like it's not relevant to tonight specifically, but like Chicago, who in the world knows how the hell to project the Bulls right now with, you know, all of what they did in the offseason in terms of, you know, reloading on another team that won't be able to stop and defend anybody, but another team that obviously loaded up in terms of its offensive approach. But
interesting though. See, this is, I mean, the Bulls, I'm very, very high on from a win totals perspective. I mean, 41, I believe 41 and a half, I think was the final number that it landed on. I think they're absolutely a playoff team in the East, which I think has to be over. It's probably my favorite win total that exists on the board for an over. Pretty much play the unders on all win totals. That just tends to print money. A little fun fact, but looking at the Bulls team, Lonzo Ball can defend. Alex Caruso is going to be on the floor a lot more than you think. He can defend. Vooch can't defend me, so I don't really know what to think. It's like another random mismatch of
stats for Vooch.
Yeah, he's so good at it. Tell you what, it must be nice to be tall. I mean, very skilled on the offensive end, but defensively, just an absolute liability. Still, this Bulls team, I think that even Zach LaVine, very, very underrated for how efficient he was as a scorer last season. I think him and DeMar DeRozan are just an interesting duo. I'm not sure what to make of it. I think it's a better situation for DeMar DeRozan than what he obviously had in San Antonio, and I think he can still give a little something there. And then Zach LaVine will still be the number one for this team. I know I've heard some people say that it's going to kind of get diluted on him. No, he's going to score in bulk still. Just stop saying that. So I'm enjoying the Bulls for being a team to be bullish on. That's a very easy way of saying that. Bullish. There we go.
Good pun. We're going to get out of here in a couple of minutes, but we've spent a lot of time talking about the stars, obviously, and rightfully so. It's where the bulk of your money is going to go in terms of jock market. But that being said, I think there are a couple of key questions that I have for you. One, is either of these games going to be a blowout? In which case, obviously, some of those bench players become much more attractive, and you know, some of those stars will end up sitting down. And also, just the general synergy between jock market and DFS. You know, there is a real correlation between the two in terms of, you know, how you should look at projections, because, you know, I can look at it, for instance, look at Alex's projections and tell you that, okay, in the world of DFS, you know, Jordan Poole is, projected to have a very good night. He's a solid value option. He's a cheaper guy. There are others that are in the Grayson Allen in that mix, Bruce Brown in that same mix as well. You could Drew Holiday, even though obviously he's more expensive, he's, you know, in a decent value spot in terms of points per dollar. You can take that knowledge, spin it obviously over to Jock Market and look at the pricing, look at the fair IPO price. Who are the cheaper guys that you think are good investments early in the day right here that you think are going to deliver for you tonight?
So I think early in the day and then what we're going to be watching live are two completely different things. I think we talked a little bit before the show about Otto Porter's ceiling that can exist in pretty much any situation. We saw it in Chicago. We've seen it every stop throughout the league for Otto Porter. He's been able to just kind of make things happen. He will not be in this starting lineup. We already have that. Jordan Poole's going to be starting here. He's going to get a lot of this second unit run. And I'm kind of thinking that if he can be healthy, which is a huge question mark for him, he's healthy right now. So I'm willing to take some shots on him. Looking at his fair IPO price, I'd be surprised to see him get up to $7.30. But even still, he's the kind of guy who gets in a rhythm, can put up stats in a number of meaningful ways and really outkick his projections. So Otto Porter would be one guy I'd be looking to invest in. And then you talked about the blowout angle. So I want to address this for Jock Market as well. You're able to buy, sell, and trade players in real time during the games. So if something does get wonky, which by Vegas's projections, I mean, 1.5 spread for the Nets Bucks game, 3.5 for the Lakers Golden State game, doesn't seem like it's going to be a blowout. But if it ends up being a 15-point game in the fourth quarter, that's when you want to start investing in certain guys in that late night hammer. You know, a guy like Nemanja Bjelica, who definitely has been fantasy viable for Golden State in the past year, not for Golden State, but for other teams, Sacramento Kings, Miami Heat the last 2 years. But Nemanja Bjelica could be somebody who gets all the fourth quarter run. A guy like Juan Toscano-Anderson, who would be completely unowned, doesn't even project for us like whatsoever. Somebody that you might want to be able to get to just in the event that there is a massive blowout. Look at getting some of those fourth quarter scores, because 12 minutes of time for them at $1 or $2, you could be looking at a massive payout at the end of the night.
I like to read nice things. Taking a look in the chat. Darren says, great point, Eric. You're on point, man. You're locked in. Mark says these two boys are a match made in DFS. Let's go, baby. Let's go. We probably kind of look alike here.
Well, it's kind of nice to, there's that, but it's kind of nice to cover a real sport for once. You know what I mean? I'm kidding. I cover every sport and I love all the sports. But NBA is my baby. I mean, you're a diehard Celtics guy. I know.
True.
I'm a diehard Timberwolves
in general. Love the league. I'm all about it. Spencer wants to know, Jordan, what are you doing for your birthday? Probably a lot more of this.
Just work and putting your head on the table in shame. Just
oh my God, I'm tired of this. Is this day over yet?
I have to hear Eric talk 3 hours a day. It's no birthday.
How old are you, Jordan?
21. 26? 27?
27.
Baby.
That wasn't just an awkward pause. He really had to think about that. You should have seen him. He took his fingers out and carry the one. All right, here's what you got going on over the course of the rest of this day. We're going to get out of here, but at 4:30, half hour from now, not even, MLB Strategy Show. Terry and Max are going to join you. It's a Jock Market program as well. And it should be a fun one, obviously, especially with a pretty big Red Sox Astros game tonight. I'm biased. There's one on the docket. You got Braves Dodgers to think about as well, obviously. NBA Deeper Dive will be Laffy and Adam at 5:30. It's about an hour program. A lot of DFS centered content there, getting you ready for the 2 games slate to tip off this season. Eric will come on back with Greg for NBA Live Before Lock, and they'll even do a little bit of post as well. They're just going to be locked in. They're going to be sitting here ready to give you all the information, all of it. So make sure you tune in. It's what you got to do.
Go Sox.
Go Sox, always. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. I know I did. Eric and I will be back. We'll do it again next week, but we'll be back a little bit later on this week to do some NFL as well. So look forward to that. Like we said, Eric covers everything at all times. Jordan, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, dear president.
Great.